Hello and welcome to Health Innovations at Work mini session. Your chair is your throne. Make adjustment like it's your own. This is Nurse Jessie, and we are here to talk about topics that you have asked to hear about with our featured guests, Adam Martell and Scott Olenichek, our resident experts in PT and OT, respectively. Hello, guys.
Hello. Hello.
Thanks for being here today. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about the throne, the holy grail of office furniture.
The hunt for the holy grail.
Why is this such an important topic that we're dedicating a half hour of our time to take a deep dive into this piece of equipment?
Mm-hmm. You know, when I look at it as a throne, it really is, it's just about where a person spends their 8 to 10 to 12-hour work days. And we find that just by being on site, a lot of our therapists will say the same thing. If we can actually match a person up with their work site, say the office desk, where their phone is, where their computer is, and now where their chair is, we find that we get a lot more satisfaction. People feel more comfortable, more fresh. They think better, their attitude's better, and we find that it helps with productivity. So it made sense. Let's talk about the throne, and let's look at how we can adjust. And maybe you'll find that you might have a nice existing chair or seat, and it's about maybe making some adjustments with that, and or looking at new furniture. So we're hoping to cover both those areas today, and that's where it rolls into ergonomics, and that's why we say when you have an ergo piece, it's about not necessarily changing the person, because I can't stretch a person and make their arms or torso longer, but what can I do to actually change the environment? And that's the chair. That's the big chair feature. So when you break the Greek word down, it's really about matching the work or the environment to the person.
I think, and Scott hits a good point there, is you can sit for more than you stand in a day, especially people who sit so much. And I like the word throne, too, because it's like ownership. I mean, we go out to people's work sites all the time, and people, like, their chair, there's like something symbolic with it. I don't know what it is, but people love their chair and they want to own it and they want to adjust it and they want it set up for them. They don't really want to share it, so it's kind of like their deal. Putting time into making it appropriately used is super important.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so what we see is that when you have that environment where someone's chair is not set up right, even if you find that, say, a person is off of work for a week, they come back, someone's borrowed their chair, and all the adjustments are changed. We find that a person they're not taking the time to actually recustomize their seating, their throne. They don't take the time to do that. What happens essentially is they start to get a little tissue, almost like they're small, their back starts to bother them. Maybe then their neck starts to bother them, their shoulders start to ache. All those little features, all those little adjustments that person took the time maybe at one point in time to adjust, or maybe they're new to this and they haven't made the adjustment, we find it leads to what we call cumulative trauma disorders or repetitive strain injuries. Essentially, they're saying the same thing. They're saying that trauma, it doesn't happen just once. It's not just a one-time event. Usually it happens over a period of time. In this case, if you're talking about a seating option, person might be sitting in the chair for, say, 8, 10, 12 hours, and maybe while it's fine for the first hour, fine for the second hour, after a time, it's like their seat starts to, like they get uncomfortable, and maybe like their hamstrings, sometimes even compression on the nerve if they're sitting on a part of their sciatic nerve, and it's irritated. Sometimes, too, I'll get even like a little stress point where the armrests, maybe the armrests are positioned too tall, and then they can feel some tension in their shoulders. So over time, it's about just the awareness piece, and it's about understanding that you do have some impact on what you can change with that chair.
Well, and I think from the overall health aspect, and I'm going to tap on the business aspect just a little bit here too, is we've spoken about this in past webinars about really the business case for prevention of musculoskeletal disorders. So, we know that there's a cost up front. Like, we've been a part of that at different companies. We get it, and we know that times are typically tight and we're doing more with less. However, with this type of guidance, that these guys are giving in this webinar today, but also a more in-depth offer that we kind of will talk about at the end of the webinar here. But some more in-depth focus, that you can do this systematically, you can do it very calculated and strategically, that will actually give you those wins down the road, even though the investment will be up front. And with that guidance, though, I think is the main thing, because you could go out and get a chair that you think is good, but not so much. So that's why these guys are here, to help share this with you. And then just from the holistic standpoint, you know, Scott, we were talking about, you know, okay, so you're going to have this musculoskeletal injury that happens over time, it's cumulative, talk about that sciatic pain, but how debilitating that can really be, not only the cost to insure that portion of the person, but also what comes along with it. So maybe they're not sleeping at night, and now maybe they're depressed. And so we have a whole host of problems that literally have stemmed from a chair.
Right. It's not always a one-size-fits-all when you look at the initial investment in the chair. And so that's where, you want to look at chairs that are going to offer you certain features. But I also want to add that if you actually just start looking at the chair as just a possession itself, I think sometimes people even just look past that. And that's where I see companies investing in sit-stand workstations. Like, they surpass the idea that, I can make an adjustment to the chair. But rather, they look past that and they say, gosh, I think I need a sit-stand workstation. Or I think I need these really expensive monitor arms that can position the monitor horizontally, vertically, where money is almost like misspent. You know, it's almost like thousands of dollars where they're investing, when in fact they look past that and they say, gosh, what can our chairs offer us? And even just some simple, just like you said, simple adjustments, and don't need to make all the adjustments up front at once. You might just start with some armrests. Maybe you start with a vertical height, and we're going to go into that in a bit. But just start with a few adjustments, and then sit on that for a few days. Like that?
Sit on it.
No, I think it's, you know, cost is always interesting, and, you know, so many times, and we get it with patients, right? It's like more does not mean better, right? So just because it's available, or just because, you know, I mean, the person right next to you in a cubicle, or the person that is down the hall that got something, it doesn't mean that it's great, and it doesn't mean that it's for you. And so, you know, sometimes the best recommendation is to be like, well, no, don't purchase that. That is not for you. And here's why, you know, and so when you look at costs, it gets thrown around. More is not always better, and the coolest looking thing does not always work. It really is usually the simpler things that you need to dive into. And realistically, I mean, if you were going to buy something that you were going to be in for hours upon hours upon hours every day, you'd hope you'd actually do a little bit of research, too, on what would be the best for you. I mean, sometimes we help with that, but, I mean, if you're going to buy a car, you just don't go to the car dealership and just say, hey, give me the car that, you know, just give me the cheapest car, give me the most expensive car, or, you know what I mean? Like, you'd weigh out the pros and cons. I mean, I'm 6'3". You don't give me that small car because I can't fit in it. You know what I mean? But, man, maybe that was the best deal. Like, you really kind of, like,
it's your
look into it. You can. It sounds like you should sit in them, too. Yeah, like much like a test drive a car. I think, I've seen that where people will go to places and just sit on them and come back to it and kick the tires, so to speak. So. So on this next slide, if you're actually following the video portion of this, we look at some of we call it the cumulative trauma disorders, the repetitive strain injuries that we'll see in the office. And again, these are just a few, but to name some, thoracic outlet syndrome. Sometimes, again, we get someone that I call it the gravity syndrome, because it's almost like people will start the day tall and proud, shoulders brought back, head tall, sitting tall, and next thing you know, those shoulders, as the day progresses, it's a bit of sundowning. The shoulders will kind of rock forward, your head will kind of roll forward, your upper back will be hunched, and you won't engage your core abdominals. And so with all that posture, sometimes then comes the numbness and tingling that you'll get in the fingertips. It's not just one side, it's kind of both sides. With the neck pain itself, again, it goes a lot with what are you looking at all day. So if you're hunched over, your posture is actually kind of gone to the wayside. you've got your monitors in front, and then a person's, chair is not adjusted right. So we kind of feel that stress in the upper neck, the upper traps, base of the shoulders, and even back to the poor circulation. So if you will, just like if you're sitting down with me right now, just kind of run your fingertips along the front edge of the desk, and you'll feel there's not a bull nose necessarily on that front edge. Usually it's a sharp kind of contact. And with that, if you're resting your hands, your forearms against that because your chair is not properly aligned, that can cut off some of that circulation, and also the lower back discomfort. And I put lower back on there too because I think that's one of the biggest things that as therapists we'll see on site and people come up and have questions about. And some of it may be not necessarily due to your chair, but your chair certainly doesn't help it. So,
yeah. I mean, and other ones too, you got headaches and carpal tunnel type of issues, pain into the thumb, right? I mean, the thumb is the most likely arthritic joint in your hand, and so even just how you're positioning it or how you're using the mouse can relate to that, and the height in which the desk is at can contribute to some of those things, and the tennis elbows and the even just pain in the front of your shoulders. All of those things can all be related to how you sit. And I think I always say to patients, the first thing that if you want to deal with any sort of pain, the first place that you start is sitting. It's in your chair. It's how you set up your chair, because your chair is kind of your base. It's like setting the foundation for everything else. So yeah, I mean that there's so many more out there. We just touched on a couple of them.
I actually see people sitting like the guys I'm sure.
Right. Yeah. There's a picture of a guy on a laptop, and he looks like he's visited the local elementary school. He's got the tiny chair with the low desk, bent forward, but man, you go through any airport, you can find like 10 people like that working on a laptop. Instead of a stationary desk area.
People that travel.
Laptops are, the biggest concern with a lot of desks area in setting up and how to get good posture. So, that's a pretty good picture.
The image is kind of dark there too, but the lower right image, I call it the water skiing show, because I will see this. As we do our office ergonomics, which is a large part of our business, as our therapists touch a lot of various size companies. Well, nothing's worse than going out and setting up someone's office chair because they're complaining about the neck aches, the headaches, the back pain, and the sciatica and things like that. So you go out there, you'll set up the chair, and next thing you know, they'll be just like that, because that feature has not been locked out. So, for instance, this gentleman very well may be able to reach down to his right side and actually pull up on a bar, which will actually lock that position. So that person should not be rocking back.
Right. So I say before we talk about the correct way, we talk about maybe some incorrect things that are out there that we get asked about a ton. And one of them, I got it last week, was exercise balls. Scott, what do you
Raise your
hand.
Feel about? Raise your hand.
It's not an exercise ball.
We've had, and I thought this was hip and trendy, and I thought that the trend had actually died out several years ago. But every now and then, I get a small cluster of individuals that just kind of percolates on this, and they go back with the concept. Well, maybe I can get some exercise when I'm at work. So I do. I see these from time to time, and really, it's a funny picture, but this is quite often how people will look. So they're doing the double negative here, so where they not only have a laptop, which actually sets you up for failure for posture, but also off an exercise ball. But I'll tell people, you know what? Okay, first and foremost, you need to actually, talk to your department lead and see if they're even appropriate. Some places will not allow them because they've popped in the path of a person falls on the ground, injures their back or hip. In other situations that they do allow them, my big thing is short durations. Short durations, if in fact you really feel compelled to use these. I personally am not aware of the research that supports them. Not saying it's not out there. I haven't seen it. But I will say that if you want to use them, say, for a short duration of up to maybe an hour at a time or maybe per day, have at it as long as you're getting clarification through your department. But beyond that, gosh, that's almost like asking someone to go to the gym and work out for 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours.
Right.
So.
And you're ultimately, you've seen the muscles, the different support muscles in that picture feeling them.
Yeah, I mean,
you can't sustain that hold.
I always say to people, if you sit on a ball and you sit on it every day, you get really comfortable with sitting on a ball. And so, man, you do that for a month, and you can sit as poorly on a ball as you can sit on any chair. And so most balls don't have backrests, they don't have armrests, they roll around. You're going to be creating almost more variables that are uncontrolled than creating areas in which they're reproducible.
Right.
So, like, do you have to blow up the ball every month? Does it leak a little air? Does it roll and all of a sudden you go to sit back down and now it's not there and you missed it? And all kinds of stuff. It just, there's
the surface
there's
too.
probably some muscle activation that you get from it, but it's such a low amount that you're not going to continue to build strength, right? You might gain a little bit of strength initially, but it's like if I do anything for the first time, I might get a little sore and feel like I'm getting a little workout out of it, but after a while, that plateaus and you're no longer.
Well, and if anything, coming from the exercise science background, we used to train people on the ball. You could have a ball in the little workout room that you have and go take a break and do some, hip activation and some stretching and some abdominal work, and then come back and sit in your chair or
and might I
keep
add,
moving.
What might I add too with the ball? You really don't have any adjustments.
No, you don't. So you're stuck with what you got.
Yeah, you get what you got. You can notice that gentleman's forearms are kind of rested right against
it.
Yeah, you see his elbows dip down.
That's true. Your height better fit that centimeter.
Oh, look at that. The next picture.
Yeah. Raise your hand if you've seen this.
I think my dad used to have one back in the day.
So, the picture is of a guy who kind of is the type of chair that you still have a seat for your butt to kind of go on, but your knees are being supported along your shins, and they're kind of bent back. So the theory would be is you're displacing the weight off of some of the low back and putting it into the lower body, but it's also trying to help promote some sort of upright posture because your center of mass is changing and how it's set up. This is a big no-no for me. I've seen this in standing and in sitting where people want to try to unload a little bit of weight off of their low back by putting some stress onto their legs. But, man, if you bend your knee past 90 degrees, you're, especially as much in that picture, they're probably getting closer to a good 45 degrees left after all that. But you're starting to pinch the meniscus in your knee. There's a reason why catchers need knee replacements when they get older because that position is just not great to be in. And so, again, initially, if somebody did this for short term and they actually thought like it felt great, it's like, well, I can kind of maybe buy that like your back might feel a little better because it helps you get upright, but like you're sacrificing so much on the back end for your legs and for your knees and your ankles that it just does not make sense.
I look at circulatory too, like if you're a diabetic, neuropathy, and I think too it's like even like a Baker's cyst in your knee. And then I think about like if I have to quickly get up, if I'm not thinking it through, I get up and I had poor vascularity, what's the probability of falling over and collapsing? We do see these things from time to time, and people think the office environment is kind of in a vacuum where we don't see the injuries. That's so far from the truth. So that's why we're talking about these things today. So we all sounds like have seen this chair, this type of seating option at different locations before, and I think we're all understanding that there are better options yet.
So I know you don't have a picture of this on here, but what's your interpretation of bike pedals underneath the desk? People want to exercise while they're working. You've seen that. I think a lot of people have seen those maybe on the internet or a commercial. What do you think about those?
Oh my gosh, I think, and again, I think within the right conditions, if a person was trying to work on their circulation and maybe felt that was going to help improve maybe their alertness maybe some endorphins. We know that through physical activity, through muscle activity, we get the enkephalins kind of pumping in our system, natural painkillers. So maybe I see a bit of that. But again, after a while, I think if that is maybe drawing too much of your interest and maybe kind of neglects you from getting your work done, I think that would be kind of a compromise. So
I think it'd be, short term, right? If you want to do that for a little small portion of your day, like, hey, go ahead. But you can't expect to be in a great position with your feet strapped into a bike pedal. Because I know we get that a lot. I've even seen, it's not even a bike pedal, but it's just like a rocker bar. So your foot doesn't actually go around in a circular motion. It kind of just goes back and forth.
Oh, wow.
Almost like a swing, but your feet are on it. That makes me get a little concerned, especially if you want to do either of those activities in standing as well. Now you're actually causing weight shifts off of areas that you probably don't want. But either way, I mean, those should be such a small portion of your day that it goes back to that cost. Like, is that really what you're hoping to get out of your money?
Sounds like a research study. I'd like to see that.
Are you really burning more calories? Are you really burning, creating strength, those types of things?
Look, a to-do picture.
So in this one, we've got a photo, kind of two side by side, same gal. And, interesting enough, Adam and I were actually talking about this before our discussion today. When you look at setting someone up for posture, my big takeaway from this is when you look at the thighs. So for those that have the visual aid in front of them, they're going to see kind of like the red line that outlines where the quad is in position to the lower back. It's not that what is perfect, right? There is such a thing as perfect? Not necessarily, because it depends upon the person's condition. If they have, say, hip bursitis, or maybe some knee pain, or maybe an Achilles injury, maybe some low back pain. But just wanted to give people some options on the screen. So when you look at things, just okay. So just okay, maybe be having someone where their hips are not totally, so as they're sitting down, their hips are not totally parallel with the ground.
So their knees are a little bit lower than their hips.
A little bit lower than hips, thank you. Yeah, so when you have that, you can still maintain a pretty good erect low back posture. I might even add, too, like when you have the chair height then adjusted along with this, you're also going to find that you can lessen the contact stress. I see so much contact stress, that's why I keep hammering it, but you can then lessen the contact stress, keeping your shoulders back. And then also you'll see in the other photo, if you want to try something else too, so maybe you try this for half the day. Maybe you I've seen phone books, I've seen boxes, I've seen manuals where people will actually duct tape them together. It's a poor man's, version of a footstool. But having something where if you want to try elevating those feet, there's nothing wrong with even like alternating every couple of hours, maybe with or without, but getting your hips in more of a parallel position with the ground. So just some options for you.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is you should feel like your back is straight. I mean, if you were to drop a plumb line or if you were to, if you were to drop a line from your ear through your shoulder, it should hit your hip, right? And so that's kind of important. Plus then you start to worry about the height of your thigh. And if it's too low, well, then you're going to probably slide forward, or you might lean a little bit taller because of that, and then you're not using the backrest. And so, putting a footstool in there helps with that.
What do you think, Adam? I have a little comment here about the pressure on the back of the knees. So we call that seat pan depth.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's important. I think sometimes that's not always a feature that comes in chairs that can be adjusted, and so people get kind of given what they're given, and depending on your height, that can be a big factor, especially for females, especially if they're shorter. It's like they don't have the length of their thigh that's just not long, right? I mean, they're shorter, and so it's touching the back. Their calf is touching the back of the chair where they're sitting on, and nobody wants that, and so you naturally slide forward. So if that seat pan depth is too short for you, that's tough. I mean, I talked about this yesterday with a patient. You should be able to get a couple fingers in between the back of your calf and the seat to make sure that you have an adequate distance there. But likewise, if you're too tall and it's too big of a space, people still tend to slide a little bit because they actually lean back a little more because they feel like they're going to fall forward out of the chair. So if you're too tall, you slide because you want to keep your weight back. But if you're too short, you slide forward because you can't get that pressure off the back of your calves.
To help determine that, so you mentioned the finger spacing, and I think that's a great idea. If I need to bring someone that needs to gap that a little bit more, what other devices out there on the market, like in a catalog or online, that you could put in the small of the back?
Oh, you're talking about pillows and those types of things? I think those are fair. It's so tough because one size does not fit all, right? I mean, if you have somebody who is a larger individual, the thickness is going to vary versus, they could even be the same height as somebody else, but the thickness that they need of the pillow is different. So you can't just go to the store or go on a catalog and buy one that looks good because it might be too big for you or it might just be nothing for you. And it really should match the chair you have. So I think more often than not, it gets frustrating for the person who goes and buys one because they're not usually that expensive. You can get one for $15, $30, $40, and then all of a sudden, it doesn't quite fit right. Now they're out, those $40, and it's kind of like, why did I get that? It's like, I don't know. Did you really think about how that was going to work with you in your chair?
May not fit the chair altogether.
Right.
So that's something that's really good to remember, though, like when you said just go sit in your chair. I mean, when you were picking out a chair of choice, really checking to see if it does have that C-pan, and if you can move that back and forward and get those two fingers in between there. That's a really good idea.
Yeah, so and I've also, in terms of cost, and I don't want to get into actual vendors so much as a lot of, just across all vendors, across a lot of chair manufacturers, you're going to find that feature. I think you maybe just have to ask, and they are available.
So if you were going to start somebody in a chair, Scott, how do you go about when you do an office or a desk or a chair? How do you start?
I usually start with the conversation saying, I'm going to change your world. I was going to say, I'm sorry, you're probably not going to like this because, when we go into an office environment, usually it's because I call it a bit of a cry for help in the office environment. People know something is wrong.
Right.
They know something is just not feeling right, maybe midday at the end of the workday, those muscles fatigue, and that's when they feel the symptoms. So I usually start off with the conversation as, let's just look at this in terms of, we're going to start with your chair. Maybe we'll look at how it then interacts with your desk. But I'm just going to be very frank with them. I'm going to say, you might find that you might only be able to try this for part of the day, and then you want to go back to those habits. But obviously, I try to work people in the right direction. But with that, I usually, as the picture, I just got a photo up here for those that have the visual aid. I try to get it so that their hips are about parallel, roughly parallel. And I think Adam touched on this too, that if you want your hips to be slightly taller than your knees, that's certainly A-okay. That's certainly not an issue with that. So it can be roughly 90 and or a little bit taller than your knees. I try to get those feet so that they're both firmly set on the floor in that position. Sometimes, too, that's where we go back with, like, the phone books together, duct tape together, or better yet, you got to have a footrest. Have something there that's going to help support yourself. Because, and Adam had touched on it, too, is that if your feet aren't supported, you're going to be what we call kind of sliding forward or sacral sitting. You'll be sliding forward in your chair. Water skiing. We're going to call that water skiing. And so just to have that stability.
Yeah, I mean, I do the same thing. It's all about the height and making sure the feet are on the ground. I don't like footrests a ton because most people will kick those away. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of always it.
Yeah, and with the armrests, too, I'll try to make them about parallel or even with the surface of the desk. And if I can really, because otherwise, if they're actually too tall, people that have a tendency to elevate or raise their shoulders too tall, and then they get headaches and maybe upper trap or upper neck discomfort. And then I'll even say, if it is all possible, would you be willing to actually bring them either A, all the way down, or B, if it's going back and if the manufacturer allows it, can we remove those armrests altogether? Because if you think about it, if a person really wants to work their core, much like the ball routine that we had shown in the other previous picture, if you want to work on the stability of those core muscles, if you want to get them engaged, if you just go without the armrest, you kind of have to, on some level, work to support yourself. So you can actually work on your core stability that way too. Other things too that, and I think you might notice it on this picture, there is a low back lumbar adjustment. Lots of people aren't even aware of those, but if you find that there is a low back adjustment, I would encourage you to try to access that. And you want to activate it so that you do fill that natural void or that natural S-curve in the small of your back, kind of fill that pocket or that groove if your chair allows it. Anything else?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you nailed it. First, I go height, feet supported, armrests, and then I just have them try to sit as straight as they can while filling the back of their chair. And so if I can adjust the seat depth and all of those things, then I know I'm kind of hitting the home run, right? Drawing that line from the ear through the shoulder to the hip, that should be pretty dang straight. And so, just kind of going down that path. And then I worry about desk height, and I worry about monitor position.
So it sounds like it all starts from there.
Right, yeah. I mean, when you think of the throne, your chair, that's where it is.
How about changing position? What do you think?
That's kind of what I was going to go back to, even kind of going back to this last point that you have on the visual aid here, stretch, postural, reset, and move.
Change.
Got to get out of your throne a little bit,
If you have pain, man, you're moving every 10, 15 minutes, pretty much. You should not hold any position for longer than that if you can. I mean, even motion lights in rooms, if the lights turn off on you, you know you have a lack of motion problem.
Right.
In some extreme circumstances, we used to have even egg timers or just timers on your smartphones. But, get up and move, and I think that's important for a lot of medical conditions, and everyone should be
good health, too. Stand up.
And people would say that strength overall is the best thing to decrease pain. So you can do a lot of these changes and adjust your chair, but if you actually have pain, you should be doing a strengthening program to balance out any desk ergonomics that you have.
Right. I think even stretching, too. Going back to that, because it's like you said, the hunched over shoulders, and we're tight in that area. I think it kind of goes back to the holistic person. And just kind of as a wrap-up here, you guys, you're offering sort of a cool thing. Scott, do you want to tell us what our listeners have available to them as like a next step in engagement with you guys?
Absolutely. So what I like to do is I like to get out and meet with the customers. So you as an organization, if you have questions about your seating options and what's available, maybe that fits your budget, that fits your lifestyle of your individuals, your employers, or your employees rather, I'd like to offer a complimentary chair, if you want to call it an ergonomic needs chair assessment, so we can kind of look at things in lieu of purchasing your equipment. Bring us out. Let us talk to you. There's several of our staff that actually would be happy to come out and meet with you at your job site. Usually the consultation just takes a little less than an hour, and again, we can kind of give you recommendations that fit your budget.
Right. I'm going to totally put you guys on the spot again because I forgot to ask you, but you've been here before. But for those who haven't listened to our other program, we always ask who's going to play you on a sitcom. If you remember that, I don't know. You'd say pass, but I think you kind of do remember. But who it helps us relate to our guests a little more.
I can start briefly with that. I think I've had this conversation with you. I've been mistaken as being Woody from Cheers.
From Cheers, yes. Totally.
Okay. So again, that was a long time ago. But anyhow, that's
going back in time.
Wow, I don't know about that. Man, who I wish I could be sometimes? Would be the actor from House. I love that guy. He takes out the emotion, right? So he's analytical, he takes out the emotion, he makes a decision not based off of what people want, but based off of what he thinks is correct. That would be awesome.
As always, thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us. And, everybody, all our listeners, have a great day.